Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, apologies for our tardy start. The time is now 3:11 p.m. I will go ahead and call to order the June regular and certification meeting of the Cobb County Board of Elections. Again, our call to order time is at 3:11 p.m. I invite all of those willing and able to rise with me for the recitation of the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first item on our agenda is the swearing in for the reappointment of Board Member Jennifer Mosbacher. And so we will go ahead and have that take place. Judge Wolk. We will defer. That's perfect. Yes.
Doesn't happen unless it happens into a microphone. Okay, we'll do the version. Okay, so I'll read all of the parts, and you can just say after each, so help me God. Unless you don't, and then that's a different conversation with these folks. So, okay, if you will raise your right hand. Do you, being a citizen of the state of Georgia and being an employee of Cobb County and the recipient of public funds for services rendered as such employee, hereby solemnly swear and affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Georgia, so help you God? I do. Okay. This one's the long one. Okay. You can relax. I got it for a minute. Okay. Do you swear or affirm that you will, as a member of the Board of Elections, duly attend all ensuing primaries and elections during the continuance thereof, and that you will, to the best of your ability, prevent any fraud, deceit, or abuse in carrying on the same, and that you will make a true and perfect return of such primaries and elections, and that you will at all times truly, impartially, and faithfully perform your duties in accordance with Georgia laws to the best of your judgment and ability. Do you further swear or affirm that you are not the holder of any unaccounted for public money due this state or any political subdivision or authority thereof, that you are not the holder of any office of trust under the government of the United States, any other state, or any foreign state which you are prohibited from holding by the laws of the state of Georgia, and that you are otherwise qualified to hold said office according to the Constitution of the United States and laws of Georgia, and that you will support the constitutions of the United States and of this state, so help you God? I do. Congratulations. This is the part that I sign. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'll get all this signed.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry. Getting updates in real time, so I'm just following up with the text messages. It sounds like the WebEx sound just started. Okay, excellent. Ms. Delancey did note that she was fine with us not calling her. Am I correct, Tammy? Okay, great. Just want to make sure I got that all together. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda. Congratulations, Member Mosbacher. Approval of the agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the agenda? All right. Are there any proposed amendments to the agenda?
Yes, I would like to propose that we add an item for new business, discussion of board member monthly stipend.
Okay. Thank you, Member Mosbacher. Are there any other proposed revisions or amendments to the agenda?
I did not hear what she added.
Huh. Not sure why you didn't hear what she added. Can you not hear me?
I can hear you fine. Often I can't hear her. I think it's the acoustic.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Go for it. You got it.
So Member Mosbacher requested that we amend the agenda to add an additional item under new business, and that's the discussion of the Cobb elections stipend amount. Are there any other proposed revisions or amendments? Hearing none. Just let them finish up.
Paper works.
Great.
Oh, that's not even my pen. I'm not stealing her yet. Easier to get up this direction. Nope, not that direction.
Not that direction. All right. There is a motion on the floor to amend the agenda to add the specified item, that being the discussion of the Cobb Elections Board stipend. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. It's been moved and properly seconded to amend the agenda to add a fourth item under new business, that being the discussion of Cobb Elections Board stipend. All those in favor? The motion passes, with a 4-0 vote, noting that Ms. Affred is not with us this afternoon. Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. May and April were busy months. We have 5 sets of meeting minutes to approve. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes, that being for April the 29th, May 2nd, 5th, 16th, and 27th?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. I have reviewed them as well. I did note a couple of Scrivener's errors, or just nominal revisions that corrections need to be made. We've previously identified those during the course of a meeting and suggested that we would approve them subject to those Scrivener's errors, because they don't, affect any substantive portion of it. So with that being said, is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the meeting minutes for the following meetings: April 29th, May 2nd, May 5th, May 16th, and May 27th, subject to the correction of any Scrivener's errors. Unless there is any discussion, all those in favor? Again, the motion passes 4-0, noting Ms. Effrett's absence. Okay. Next, we will go on to public comment. Obviously, we were attempting to make certain that Miss Monica Delancey, who had signed up virtually, was able to join us. She has indicated that she is fine not joining us. She's just going to listen in. And so we only have one public commenter here in the room, Ms. Rossman.
Good afternoon, Chair and board members. I wanted to talk about this recent election because everybody I would talk to didn't know there was even an election going on. And so there was a lot of confusion, not getting anything in the mail saying that there's an election, like zero communication. I personally didn't receive anything, nobody I knew that did. When I voted on the day of, my husband and I went in around 12:30. We were the 19th and 20th voter. The couple in front of us only knew about it because they were at another church earlier that day at a funeral, and they had voting there, and they said, oh, we'll have to drive by Mount Perrin and see if there's an election. So anyway, I think that's like kind of really poor communication, and I mean, it's all over the state too. But from what I understand, the advance in-person voting was like 3,856 voters. And then there were like many precincts that had under 100 voters for the entire day on election day. And, you know, I come from the private sector where you have to be accountable. You either are providing a service or a product, and you make an agreement and you deliver. And as a citizen, how do we hold anybody accountable in this? Because I think it's pathetic. It was a pathetic turnout. So it would be really nice to know, because I have a friend that will be doing her open records request to see how much this is costing the taxpayers. Is it like $500 a vote? Because when you have such a pathetic turnout and you have like a month of voting, and then you have poll managers, poll workers, and a full staff and all this, like, seriously, the citizens don't like spending money on stupid things. And stupid, when I say voting, not stupid, not representing it, not giving the voters an opportunity to get out and vote, that is not good. So I would just like to say, I don't know what we can do to make this feel like it's a real job and accountability, but it is a real job, and the citizens deserve to know when there is something coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rossman. That concludes public comment. The next item on the agenda would be new business, starting with our director's election report. Director Fall.
Thank you. We'll get the slides pulled up here and jump into our report. So up first, we're just going to go through for the election update. We're going to talk a little bit about pre-election day, election day, and then the post-election day activities, and then we'll take a break and come back for the AIP schedule, and then I'll finish up with my director's report. So for pre-election day, we had 3,856 total voters vote early. So this is a breakdown of our sites. You can see our busiest site was our main office. We actually got a visit from the AJC the last week of early voting. They let us know that we were the second busiest site in the state of Georgia at our main office. A lot of that is to do with training. So we heavily encouraged all the poll workers coming to training to vote while they were there. That way they didn't have to worry about it if they were in a different precinct on election day. So that's why we had a really steady group coming through when the training classes were on break or when they finished. So that was great. And then you can see we had East Cobb Government Center had 921 voters. South Cobb Community Center had 709. And then our Northwest location at West Cobb Regional Library had 744. And then here's just a sampling of the days that we were open. So we were open all 3 weeks for this election. So we had the first and second Saturday, and then we were only open one Sunday. So you can see the first day was pretty quiet. And then we were busier on the Saturdays than we were that first day. Again, main busiest because we had Saturday classes going on. The Sunday was really quiet overall for us. So you can see across those sites, pretty quiet with the after church crowd. And then that last day, as always, is busy. So again, busiest at our main office, followed by the south location, and then east, and then last was northwest. When we look at the AIP breakdown by party, we had 2,676 voters cast Democrat ballots and 1,180 cast Republican ballots for a total of 3,856 for early voting. When we look at ABM, we had 193 total ballots cast for absentee by mail. So you can see we issued 244, we got 207 back, and then 14 of those were rejected for various reasons, and then 6 were cured to go into that total voted portion for 193. Looking at that same breakdown, we have 126 voters voted ABM on a Democrat ballot, 67 Republican for a total of 193. When we look at election day, this is a little bit of a chart of how our day looked. So you can see we really peaked in that 5 p.m. hour, that after work crowd. So we were slow in the morning and then built up to that 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then tapered off before we closed at 7. When we look at the election day breakdown, we had 8,210 voters cast Democrat ballots, 3,581 cast Republican ballots for a total of 11,791 voters on election day. We have our official and complete results. So we looked at this chart on Friday. So you can see now we've adjudicated the Jarvis voter credit against our ballots cast number. So the e-pulse number list still remains 6 less from Election Day because those 6 supplemental voters, so they aren't going to be in e-pulse because they weren't checked in on the poll pads. The AIP number tied out on e-pulse perfectly, so you can see we had a total of just over 3% turnout for 15,873 voters. Looking at this, I did want to address something that we talked about on Friday, which was the discrepancy between some DDS entries and poll pad and Jarvis not syncing correctly. So I know we talked briefly about the emergency list in the meeting on Friday. I did verify with the team that the emergency list is only used in emergency situations, only when they need to use emergency ballots. So only one precinct accessed their emergency list. That was Soprico 3. Because they opened late, they didn't have access to their poll pads, so they needed to access their emergency ballots in the emergency list. So the standard procedure is, and has been for some time, that if they want to access that emergency bag, which is sealed, that's what has the emergency list in it. They have to call the office and get permission. They have to tell us why they need to access their emergency bag, and then we give them permission to cut that seal and access it. So again, Soprico 3 was the only precinct that had that authorization to do that. I did review the files of the emergency list, and the paper files of the emergency list did match what was on the poll pads. So that was inconsistent with Jarvis. So those are going to be the same files because they're pulled from the same place. So we alerted the Secretary of State as soon as we realized on Election Day that there was an inconsistency. And the Secretary of State team let us know that they had actually received another report of a May DDS update that didn't transmit to the poll pads, and that they were currently investigating the issue and would get back to us when they had more information. And that's the last that we'd heard on that topic. So haven't gotten more information from them on that. But that is the procedure of when and how we use the emergency list. So only in those emergency scenarios where they need to access their emergency ballots or they don't have access to their poll pads. And then lastly, we have the risk limiting audit. So that will be this Thursday, June 26th, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. at our main office. The parties have been notified that there will be 8 teams doing the audit, so they can send 8 observers each. And of course, it's also open to the public. Anyone that's interested is welcome to come and observe in the public viewing area during the RLA. So with that, I'll pause. If we want to pull up the election summary report that was on the top of your stack, we'll get that projected up on the screen so the board can ask questions and you can vote on those numbers if you so see fit.
Great, thank you, Director Fall. Just going back to AIP, this was a statewide election, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that being the case, the days that the polls were required by law to be open are set by the Secretary of State, am I correct?
The Sundays are optional.
Other than the Sundays?
Yes.
So the 3 weeks of early voting is set out in Georgia law, correct?
Yes, the 3 weeks and the 2 Saturdays.
And the 2 Saturdays?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that point for those that are in attendance or maybe watching. But go right ahead.
That was it. I just, if you want to look at the numbers and vote to confirm or ask any other questions.
Yeah.
I was done with my election day report.
Does anyone have any questions about the numbers as presented during Director Fall's report, or for that matter, what's presently on the overhead and on the screen?
I do have a question, and maybe now is not the time, but in comparing the Jarvis report that you sent either yesterday or today I believe, the total of 15,873, interestingly enough, the Jarvis report, if you look at all data, only has 15,748 lines. So that's off by 125 voters.
That should not be
Well, it was
correct.
B.
Because the first tab is a pivot table that's directly pulling that data and those numbers, so.
It's your
Let me
first
take a look
tab
at
called
it.
All Data.
Are you looking at the numbers that I gave you on Friday or the one I emailed today? Because the first tab, on the one I emailed today, the first tab is called summary, and then the second tab is all data.
Oh, I'm pulling these numbers from the first tab, summary. So the all data tab is called all data.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was the email I received today.
Yeah, I'm looking at that file right now, and it is 15,873 on the all data tab.
On the all data tab, your data shows 15,873 lines.
It says it 15,874, and then when you remove the title, that would be 15,873 if you want to
That's
look at
odd. No, I'll take your word for it. Mine didn't, the document I opened. And I checked it multiple times. And then I did add the individual numbers, which maybe again, I have the wrong file. The absentee by mail was 193, check. Early in person was 3852, not checked. Election day was check, 11791, and provisionals were the same.
it. I'm looking at the AIP tab, and it does have 3,856 lines of data. 3,857 if you count the title row.
That's odd. Maybe it was the one that you sent previously I was looking at. Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have questions for Director Fall?
I have a question.
Mr. Burning, your mic, please, sir.
I have a question regarding the District 3 Democratic primary. That's the one where one candidate was disqualified.
Correct.
So how many votes, or how many, I know they weren't votes, they weren't counted as votes, but how many people punched that button and lost their vote?
We can't tabulate the people who vote for him, so all we can go off of is the undervotes. So if we were to add those three candidates together, and you see that they have a total of 10,160, but 11,040 ballots were cast on the Democrat race. That gives you an idea of approximately how many people either cast a ballot for the disqualified candidate or cast a blank ballot in that race, or a blank race in that,
So
on their ballot.
That's only about 900 voters. So it was not a big impact overall, although it might have made the difference between having a runoff or not. That's the way it is. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Are there any additional questions for Director Fall? Yes, Ms. Fisher?
Again, this may not be the appropriate time to bring it up, but on the provisionals on the Jarvis report, I did notice that there was no designation by party.
Yes, so there is a provisional module within Jarvis that they recently updated. And when they did update that, it no longer allows us to select the party. So we alerted the Secretary of State to that on Friday when they were putting in the provisional credit, and they realized that after we had counted those ballots. And so the Secretary of State gave us the option to either remove their provisional credit and give them Election Day regular credit, which I don't feel comfortable doing. That way we could assign them a party, or to make a note in their credit citing what party they voted. So those are the two options that we were presented. So we will make sure that when we get the voter file for the runoff, that we update an e-pulse. We work with Knowing to update an e-pulse these 33 voters party. That way only those who are eligible to vote in the Democrat runoff can.
So when the card was issued for those provisional voters, I assume that went into the poll pad, correct?
So provisional voters aren't issued a card. Their ballot is manually activated on the screen. So they can
Okay.
only be issued a card if they're checked in on the poll pad. Provisional voters aren't checked in on the poll pad because we don't know if their ballot's going to count or not.
Okay.
And so, Director Fall, you mentioned that the Secretary of State provided you with an option, and so you, in consultation with the staff, determined that you all would make the update, correct, as opposed
Yes.
to providing them with election
Yes, that we will add a note in their file and then work with knowing to ensure that it's at least reflected in ePulse what party if they're eligible or not to vote in the runoff.
And when were we aware of that?
On Friday, when we put in the credit, and we realized that we couldn't select a party.
Any update from the SOS as to when or if they may update the provisional module such that credit or a party designation can be identified?
I believe they only gave us those two options. They didn't state anything about a potential date of resolution, no.
Well, and
So I'm sorry, the provisional module in Jarvis, whereby every provisional ballot that is actually cured and is an effective vote to be counted across the state, no one is going to be able to designate for that particular voter when you upload the provisional credit, whether that ballot is casted either Democrat or Republican, such that there will need to be a manual note placed in that voter's record, their voter file, as maintained by the Secretary of State. So the Secretary of State's office is suggesting that everyone do this manually?
Yes, this is a statewide issue. We're not the only ones experiencing this.
Oh, I understand that. I'm just trying to make the point in this public forum that the Secretary of State's office is essentially making the offices across all 159 counties manually update voter files to indicate what ballot they cast.
Correct.
With respect to party designation.
Correct. And then, like I said, we will have to work with ePulse to make sure, because that's not going to translate to ePulse. Like, the notes aren't going to translate over, so we have to work with knowing to make sure that when the voter list is uploaded to ePulse before AIP starts on the 7th, that only these 33 individuals who cast a Democrat ballot are eligible to vote in the Democratic runoff. So anyone who cast a Republican provisional ballot isn't eligible. So we'll have to make sure that they manually fix that on the ePulse.
So if I look up on my voter page, it won't show.
If you were a provisional voter,
Yeah.
it just says provisional credit. It doesn't say what party you voted in that column, you know.
How would it normally say?
So there's a line that shows you what election you voted in, how you voted, whether it was provisional, yes or no, and then there's a line that says party. So that would just be blank, as if it was a nonpartisan election, like how it was in November. There's not a party listed.
Are they putting any notice within that file so the voters not like my vote didn't count?
They didn't tell us if they were going to be doing that or not, no.
Could you maybe check into that?
Sure, we can follow
Because-
up to see if they'll put something on MVP for those provisional voters.
Okay.
And I guess when you follow back up with them, could you inquire? I mean, I know that the Secretary of State's office had some personnel changes, and the person that I believe was primarily responsible for kind of the IT functions left. I don't know whether that person has been replaced. But maybe inquire as to whether they have any intention on fixing this. I mean, for 33 provisional voters, that's one thing, but and we can take a look at kind of what that implication of in a what's the implication of that in a larger race such that, or a larger election or a higher turnout election, where we could potentially have a larger number of provisional and then someone on the staff has to go in there and manually make that update.
Sure, yeah, we'll definitely request a follow-up on that one.
Okay, perfect. Anything further? No? Okay. Hearing nothing, we'll entertain a motion to certify the results of the PSC June 2025 primary election as presented.
so moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. It has been moved and properly seconded to certify the election results for the PSC, Public Service Commission, primary, which occurred on June 17th, 2025. All of those in favor? The motion passes with a vote of 4-0. If you will note that Ms. Efford is not present with us. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, AIP voting schedule for the July 15th primary.
runoff. So you have the flyer in your packets, and I have it up here on the screen as well as a map on the next slide. So we're proposing the same 4 locations that we utilized for the June primary. So that'll be our main office, South Cobb Community Center, East Cobb Government Center, and West Cobb Regional Library. All 4 will have drop boxes. We'll start on Monday, July 7th, and go through Friday, July 11th, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So that's our proposal. Here is the map for reference. Again, the same 4 locations we used for June, and all 4 will have drop boxes.
Director Fall, the proposed schedule, July 7th, with respect to the days, July 7th through July 11th, how did the team come up with that?
So typically when we have a runoff, those are the dates that we utilize. You can start AIP as soon as possible, and so Monday is the last day that you have to start AIP. So we just received the project at 2:30 today, so we just started the process of proofing, and then we'll hopefully start LNA on Wednesday, so that's what pushes us to that start on that Monday. So this is the same thing we did for the March 11th runoff earlier this year. It's just the Monday through Friday.
Okay. But this is a time frame or a time period that the team is proposing. It's not dictated by the Georgia Code.
We do have to start on Monday and go through Friday the week before, but the hours would be extended, yes.
That's what I was getting to the extent that there's concern about how we are opening the polling places during AIP, you and your office, or we are just complying with Georgia Code, correct?
Correct, yes.
Got it. Such that only the hours are up to our discretion.
Correct,
For this
yes.
particular election.
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have questions for Director Paul?
I know we try to be consistent for the time, but considering the low turnout for the primary, do you really feel like 12 hours is necessary?
I know when I brought schedules to the board in the past that the desire has been consistency, and this is the same schedule we did for the March 11th runoff, which is why we went with this. We're happy to do 8 to 5. We're happy to do 8 to 6, 7 to 6, whatever the board prefers. But in terms of consistency, which is, I know, a conversation we've had quite frequently, that's what led us to propose this schedule.
With the March runoff, that was 68 polling locations?
69.
69
I
polling
believe.
locations, and with
68.
68, that's what I thought.
Well,
68,
the runoff was only 39 because it was just District 4.
okay, District 4,
So we did 2 sites.
even less.
Yes.
However, with this particular runoff, it's all 148 locations.
Yes.
Does anyone, I mean, I tend to echo Director Fisher's position on this, in as much that, ideally things would be open consistently. I don't know if we want to bring back up the turnout numbers, but we are concerned about the downtime that our election workers have over the course of a 12-hour day when there isn't perhaps the turnout to suggest that.
Yeah,
That's necessary.
ideally, we wouldn't have an election in June and July.
That's true.
But I think 12 hours is, I think that could be cut down and still give everyone ample time to vote.
Anybody else want to be heard on this? Yes, Mr. Rooney.
The problem is that, as you saw from the curve that Tate showed earlier, you got people coming early in the morning and people coming toward the end of the day, because that's when it's convenient for them. And it's harder for people who are working to get to the voting place other hours. Now, I agree. I used to work AIP, and there were a lot of hours that were not productive. And but knowing that our voters are working, most of them are working, and early hours and late hours are the most available to them to vote. I'd be hesitant. I mean, it'd actually be better to cut out the morning and the afternoon as far as voters go, but at least I would be in favor of just sticking with the 7 to 7 like we've done on other elections.
I was going to say, from a consistency standpoint, we've always done that last week at 7 to 7. We only have 1 week. We don't have any weekend days on here, which I understand because it's the July 4th holiday weekend. So I think, you know, from an access perspective, it just makes sense to me that we continue with a 7 to 7 since we've just got the 1 week.
That is consistent with the position that we've taken. I just wanted to note the concern. I understand the concern that Director Fisher has raised. I guess I'll defer to you and the team with regard to how you all staff. If there are opportunities to, I don't want to say staff lightly, but maybe just look at where staff are really deployed and minimize those costs associated, if it's possible, without obviously diminishing the experience for the voter.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Aren't most of the AIP voters working half days, shift?
I believe for this election, they're full days. We are rotating out our management team to make sure that no one's hitting overtime. So during the 3 weeks of early voting that we just had, we were giving everyone a day off. That way, none of them were hitting that overtime. As we're getting near the end of the fiscal year, everyone's being mindful of overtime, and so that's something that the AIP team really focused on. So I don't think they're working half-day shifts for the upcoming election, but we were rotating the management team since they're the ones that tend to work the most hours.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to approve the proposed AIP schedule for the special primary runoff to be held on July 15th for the Public Service Commissioner election.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Mosbacher. It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the proposed AIP schedule for the special primary runoff for the Public Service Commissioner election. All those in favor? Any opposition? The motion passes 3-1, noting Ms. Fisher's opposition to the motion and Ms. Everett's absence. Okay. Moving on to, did you have anything further for us, Director Fall?
That's all for the AIP. Everything else will be in the director's update after old business.
Okay, excellent. Moving on to the fourth item that we amended to place the agenda to place on the agenda, that being the discussion of the Cobb Election Board compensation, or pardon me, stipend. Ms. Mosbacher?
Yes, thank you. I think that we had sort of some discussion about this over time. We are at a budget moment with the county where it's become time for us to really ask if this is something that we want to do. And I think I sent everybody some spreadsheets with some numbers, and I don't know if we want to discuss that and look at, you know, sort of what we would like to ask for, and if there is any thoughts on presenting the memo to the BOC with that request.
Okay. Mr. Bruning, go ahead.
I'd just like to make one comment on this, is that, you know, I was on the Board of Elections from 1991 until 95, and I looked back at my W-2 form from those days, and the stipend is exactly the same today as it was in 1991. I don't know if it was the same earlier, but I suspect it was. So it's been at least 35 years, maybe 40 years, all the same. And so I would support an adjustment requesting an adjustment from the Board of Commissioners. I know it's a tough budget time, but 40 years is a long time with the constant reimbursement. And I believe the board, and I know this board spends much more time in meetings and on elections than we did back in '91. We rarely spent more than 30 minutes for a meeting, and gosh, I can't remember so many elections as we've had in the past 2 years. So I would support the intent of asking for some amount of increase.
Okay, thank you for that historical context. And I think just for the benefit of all those that are present, or for that matter that are watching, to the extent they're not aware, the compensation that is provided to members of the board is as follows. The chair receives $200 per month, and the balance of the board members receives $150. Just to kind of level set, so you know there's context for what we're talking about for those that have joined us. Ms. Mossbacher, was there anything else you wanted to share?
Yeah, just to Steve's point, I just want to say we've had 16 meetings in 6 months. This is our 16th meeting in 6 months. So I think that, you know, at the time when Steve was on the board, it was really 1 meeting a month. I think we've definitely gone beyond that. And, you know, I looked at numbers from what other Cobb boards made, as well as other boards, other election boards in the metro area. I think sort of where I landed from a financial increase perspective was Fulton County is $500 for members, $100 for chair, and we are at about 2/3 of what Fulton's active registered voters are, and same with sort of with area when I looked at like sort of square miles comparison. So when I looked at that, that would sort of put us closer to maybe, you know, $350 a month, maybe $350 for members, $400 for chair. That's sort of when I was doing the math with what Fulton got, you know, and kind of looking at it mathematically. I don't know. I think everybody has sort of opinions. I thought we could maybe talk about it a little bit, but that's a starting point.
Your point is valid with the differentiation in the number of voters, but I truly believe the job responsibilities that we all have is very similar no matter what county you're in, Gwinnett, Bolton, DeKalb. I think all of those that are in the 500,000 or more probably dedicate a very similar amount of time. Matter of fact, I would venture to say we do and have done more than any of them because of all the special elections that we've had. And not that it should be predicated on a off year where we've just been bombarded with elections, but being commiserate with some of the other boards, the other appointed boards, I can tell you from years of following zoning and planning, and I assume on the numbers you gave for zoning, you meant the BZA board, the Board of Zoning and Appeals?
I mean, these are the, yes.
Okay, so planning has 1 meeting a month, period. That's all they have. So they have 12 meetings a year. Sometimes they do skip a meeting, I think, but I would put our amount of duties up against theirs any day, and I think we should look at something comparable to what they're compensated for, because we do meet with voters, we do go out to events, outreach events, we do go to SEB meetings, Gabrielle meetings. It isn't just these meetings that we do. And not that I think this may be the only time I've ever asked Cobb County to spend more, but I'm asking them to spend more, and not just for us. It looks like they need to adjust several boards, but I think especially the election board. Since we got the Dominion voting machines, the amount of work that an election takes is far different than what you had in 1990. And, you know, we've had many a nights on election night that we were here sleeping together on the chairs, leaving at 5 a.m. We don't get overtime.
Great.
We were here, not we, a few of us, because we couldn't have a quorum, when we messed up on sending out the absentee ballots. And you all spent, I don't think you got 3 hours of sleep in 3 days. So I put our workload up against anybody on this list, just saying.
I agree, and I shared my rationale for the numbers that I proposed. Obviously, to Mr. Bruning's point, the stipend has been the same for over 30 years. Obviously, elections are administered very differently now. We meet more frequently than any other Cobb boards noted below. I mean, it's monthly, once a month for them. And I know for the balance of this year, minimally, there will be 2 months that we have a minimal of 3 board meetings. The other months will minimally have 1, but we also have special meetings from time to time. I know that I personally attend, and others do attend, whether in person or virtually, the SEB meetings, because from time to time there are matters that are discussed during those meetings that implicate the business of this board. In addition to that, to Ms. Fisher's point, the election night meetings require late hours. Even when we're not staying till 3, 4, and 5 in the morning, I believe we all walked out on this past Tuesday at about 5 or 10 minutes till 11. Having arrived at 7 p.m., sometimes we're there at other times. Some of us are there for RLA, the risk limiting audit. So we do expend a significant amount of time conducting the business of this board. So what I proposed was $780 for the chair and $680 for other members, just because I like round numbers, and what the total would be. So, and I do want to note, I believe Ms. Mossbacher made mention of Fulton County previously. Well, currently it's $600 for the chair and $500 for other board members. And I'll note that was actually changed in 2023. The Fulton County Board of Commissioners essentially approved a increase in that stipend from $300 to $600 for the chair, and from $250 to $500 for the for other members. So that's my my suggestion. Happy to talk through whether my colleagues feel that that's appropriate or not.
I do believe that I heard, rumor, no proof, that DeKalb is considering raising theirs as well.
I can't imagine they wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just to kind of follow on, and thank you, Member Mossbacher, for pulling together all of the data here. You know, while we're talking about boards for counties that have a comparable or a similar number of active voters, I know that Gwinnett pays its chair $250 per month and its other members $200. However, in addition to that, there is a $50 per meeting additional amount. So just kind of wanted to level set to the extent we're talking comparable counties with respect to the number of active voters and the work that we are responsible for performing. Ms. Fisher?
I do have a question on the submittal of this request, because I think there might be some confusion on how and who and when. We really are out of time. If you follow the budgetary process with the county, I believe their first vote or first hearing is the first meeting in July, and then the final vote for approval, I believe, is the last meeting. So, Tate, I would love to see the overall budget so that we can actually know what Cobb is, Elections is doing. But I'm assuming that the line item has remained the same. Have you been following the updates from finance and the commissioners?
Sure. So we put together a memo of what our priorities are that we've requested. That's not, since we're in the middle of the biennial, typically they just copy and paste the same budget over. So we submit a memo with our priorities of positions. We can put 2 positions and I think two things to increase on the budget. And so all of our personnel requests were denied. They're only giving 4 new positions across the county. And then our increase in the training budget was also denied. So that's all I was informed about. They'll be presenting the final budget tomorrow at the work session. And so that after the presentation is done, then the budget is posted online for the public to review. I will note when I spoke with our CFO this morning about the budget after I received your email, just to make sure I had the timeline correctly of when all of that was going to be approved. I had mentioned the board increase because I had submitted a memo in February to the county manager requesting an increase for the board for $500 for the chair and $400 for the board for each board member. And I was informed that I needed to make an agenda item and present it to the BOC to be approved outside of the budget cycle. So when I spoke to the CFO this morning, he confirmed that the budget will be approved. And then just like how I went and asked for the contingency outside of the budget cycle, which I also will have to do for FY26, that this would be a BOC agenda item where it's proposed and then they vote on it to increase that line item on our budget.
So that being the case, it sounds like a memo needs to be prepared, provided to you. It then is placed on the BOC agenda as a line item.
Yes.
Or, yeah,
Yes. So we could do that.
agenda item.
And then the effective date is up to y'all. If you want to wait till October 1 when the new fiscal year starts, if you want it to be immediate, that would just need to be defined in the memo.
I personally want it to kick in September 1 when the budget kicks in, so.
The budget kicks in October 1.
October 1.
Well, September 30th, I should have said, sorry. So,
So I know that there's a proposed memo, and thank you, Mr. White, for preparing that for us. When you and I spoke earlier, I just noted that there were a couple of just minor revisions. But I guess, are there any other concerns? It sounds as though the agenda item that, or the memo that was shared, Ms. Fall, was $500 for the board chair, and what was it, 400?
For the members, for each
Okay.
member. That was back in February. So
Right.
again, whatever the board decides, whatever you want to provide with me, I'll take to the BOC and walk the halls and we can go from there.
Okay.
well, if we have to do an add-on,
Yeah.
it's not going to kick in October. It would
Right.
be probably more like November.
Right, and Ms. Mosbacher, I know that you've taken the lead on this, and again, we've been talking about this, I wouldn't say since 2021 when we joined, but shortly thereafter. Does your schedule allow for you to join Ms. Fall in walking the halls? I mean, while I appreciate, Ms. Fall, you're doing, your willingness to do that, I think hearing from the members that are actually performing the work might be influential, who knows, to members of the BOC. Might
Sure.
be persuasive.
Sure, that would be great. And I think, again, the effective date is whatever y'all want to put on the memo. If you want it to be October 1, that's what would be presented and voted on. If you wanted it to be August 1, you could do that. I mean, they're giving us additional funds regardless, so
Right.
it's outside of the budget cycle, so the decision is yours. Just like the contingency was approved ahead of time to kick in on October 1, and we actually got special access to that early because of the presidential election. So they do allow those types of things to occur outside of the fiscal year.
So what's to keep us from going ahead and requesting an additional line item to our current budget? We still have July, August, and September. Go ahead and let it kick in, and
You can. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. If that's whenever the next agenda is, if I can check and see while we're sitting here when the next agenda submission is, and we can get on the next agenda. That hasn't closed yet.
I mean, if you can just merely submit an modification to the current budget, whether it's this budget in 25 or 26, if it's after the fact, it would make sense to go ahead and ask for it, especially with new board members
That makes
joining
sense.
in the summer months.
At some point.
It looks like the agenda cutoff for the 7-8 meeting at 9 a.m. is in 4 days. So we could do that, or the 7 p.m. meeting on 7/22, the cutoff for that agenda is in 18 days.
What, I'm sorry, what was the next, you said the cutoff for
The July 8th meeting at 9
7/8
a.m.
is in 4 days?
is 4 days, yes.
Can I just?
Yes, sir.
Two things, a couple of very minor record corrections here. So there was some talk about planning commission meets twice, and they have an agenda work session, and then they have a long. But that's correcting that record, so they do have long. But I will just say to advocate for you as someone who's been, our firm's been representing the board, as long as since Steve, and the difference in the amount of work that the board has to put in, not just in the meetings, but outside of the meetings. It used to be you'd have a lawsuit maybe once every 3 election cycles, somebody would file an election contest, and you guys are constantly getting emails. It's just because of the nature of litigation now and how the county boards are getting named as defendants. But I bet Steve probably only was named maybe in one election contest in his prior gig, but now you guys are constantly having to get updates about lawsuits and things that really are not of your own making, but just getting stuck in the middle of these things. And again, I just echo what was said earlier, that the regular election meetings used to last at, between 30 minutes to an hour most, and then you'd have one other, you'd have your primary and you'd have your election night meeting, and those were sort of and you might have one other special called meeting for some reason, but like it was not, and it's just that, and some of it's just because of this weird special election cycle we're having this year, but even the last few years, the workload has increased for the board, and so I was glad to see y'all bring this up. I mean, it's long overdue, so I just wanted to add my 2 cents to the record to sort of advocate for you that I think it's definitely justified, and I'm happy to make any tweaks to the memo to present to the
I forgot
commissioners.
about the work session.
Yeah, I do, and they go a long time, but I still put your workload up against. I
would
know the
too.
planning
I
commissioners.
would
and
too,
they-
all
yeah.
day long, yeah.
Well, thank you for that. You also provide significant historical context, given the fact that your firm has been representing the board for over 3 decades. So I think at this point, based upon the conversation, there are a couple of things we need to align on, that being the number, the amount, and then the effective date, unless there's anything I'm missing, Ms. Mossbacher. Nope? Okay. Alrighty. So we have a couple of numbers that were thrown out. The numbers as were set forth on the memo that Ms. Fall provided in February on our behalf was 500 and 400. I threw out 780 and 680. And again, just for round numbers, the total for that for the year would be $40K. And I believe, Ms. Mossbacher, at present, we're at 9,600, an annual amount of 9,600. So are there any other numbers that anyone wants to throw out for our consideration?
I did in my email.
I
It was
apologize.
5 and 600.
5 and 6, so 6 for the chair, 500 for
The
for
other 4.
for the other 4.
Yeah.
That's consistent with
But I'm okay with
Fulton.
your numbers too.
Okay.
I'm
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I'm okay with your numbers too, but I personally don't believe we should ask for less than 500 a month.
Okay. So that might be the the floor, so no less than 500 for the 4 members. And I think we've all kind of aligned on a $100 differential for the, between all the other members in the chair, I believe.
I would just, for me personally, I would only do 50 for the chair. I don't think
Okay.
that it's that much more, and I think that the other Cobb boards, actually, the chair and the vice chair each get $25 more a month. That's the other Cobb boards.
You're right.
So that's still only a differential of 50. I don't think that I wouldn't personally support more than 50 as the
Okay.
differential.
Yeah, and I'm not going to advocate too hard for that. I think I was just following Fulton in as much that Fulton was that. I understand that I'm presently sitting in the seat of the chair, and so I don't want there to be any optics that I'm going to advocate for an additional $50 for myself. I do believe, however, that there is a differential between the work that the chair does and that of the other members of the board, so.
Well, I will say too, that the planning board is by district, and they align with the commission districts, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The chair has no personal responsibility for zoning cases. So it makes sense that it would only be a very small portion up and above the planning commissioners who are appointed by their district, who do have some more than others, caseload for their district zoning requests. So I have that right, correct? I just want to make sure, because it's been a while since I participated in the zoning, because where I live is now built out, there is no more land. But anyway, I do think there's a differentiation there, so.
Okay. So then, I guess, the other thing was to the extent that, not so much the differential, but the number, to the extent that the VOC counters, to me, it seemed to be appropriate to start it with a higher number, to the
Yeah.
extent that they counter. So I guess, Mr. Bruning, what are your thoughts with respect to?
I guess I like nice round numbers, and 500 for the board members and 600 for the chair. It would be fine with me.
Okay, and I believe that's what you proposed, Ms. Fisher, in your email?
It is, and I also provided, I think, the totals. I was looking for that here. It looks like maybe I didn't.
Okay.
I don't know what font I typed this in, but
You want to know what the total is for annual with 500 and 600?
31,200 for 600 for
Yeah.
the chair, 500 for the board members.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's exactly what it is for Fulton. Okay. Ms. Fisher, or pardon me, Ms. Mossbacher, you said that you were fine with a higher number, so, but you were not in favor of a 100 amount increase, incremental increase, for the chair over the balance of the board.
If that's where everybody lands, though, it's.
No, I
I'm
understand.
just saying,
That's what-
that's my opinion.
Understood.
But it's, I mean, if.
I was just going down, Mr. Bruning said 6
Yeah.
and 5, Ms. Fisher said 6 and 5, and so I was coming back to you so that we could come up with a motion, minimally on the number, so.
Great, let's do
Perhaps
it.
someone wants to make a motion.
I'm good with it.
Mr. Bruning, go right ahead.
I move that we request the Board of Commissioners to approve a $600 stipend for the chair and a $500 per month stipend for the board members.
Okay. Is there a second?
Can you add a date to that for the meeting date?
We're
Or
gonna-
no?
Effective,
Okay.
wasn't quite
October.
finished,
Yeah.
October
All right.
1st.
Sorry. You
Well,
paused.
wait. We can go ahead and ask for this increase in the current 25 budget. That way it kicks in when we have a new board members coming on, and otherwise we'll be waiting until we get on the agenda in November. Right?
Okay.
Because you aren't going to go back and ask for it in September when it kicks in.
So there's a motion on the floor for to request that the Board of Commissioners approve a stipend in the amount of $600 for our board chair, $500 for the balance of the members, effective as of what date, sir?
I said October 1st.
Okay.
But I would be
August 1st.
August 1st.
August 1st,
would be
okay.
fine with me.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
I just want to say, I think August 1 is probably unrealistic.
Right.
I think we would be better off to ask for October 1st, because I just do. I think that would be a more equitable ask. But that's me personally.
Okay. Well, there's any further discussion?
I'm sympathetic to having this in place for the new board members to start with. So that was the reason I agreed to August 1st.
Okay. Any further discussion? We voted up or voted down. So there is a motion, it's been moved and properly seconded to submit a request for the Board of Commissioners approval to increase the stipend paid to the Board of Elections Chair to $600, the balance of the board members to $500, effective August 1st. All of those in favor? And I am abstaining, but the motion passes 3 with 1 abstention and noting Ms. Affrett's absence. Thank you for that. So, Mr. White, I know we have a form of memo that you've shared with us. Again, there were just a couple, like the 2 and the 150. I will make those revisions within the next day and get that back to you. Ms. Fall, with respect to we need to get this to you by Friday. I believe you said within 4 days, by Friday or Thursday, for the July 8th meeting.
Let me double check
Yeah.
what time the cutoff is.
I just heard 4 days, so I don't know whether we're counting today or starting tomorrow.
Looks like June 27th is the cutoff, the
Okay.
27th.
Then that would be Friday. Okay. We will work on it. Is there any, and thank you all for that. Is there any old business? Nope. Hearing none, we'll move on to the election office reports and updates.
Great, so we'll pop back over to the slides, just a few more to look at. So as we are done with the June 17th election, we're moving right into the July 15th runoff. So just a high-level overview of what we're already working on. We started working on last week. So for absentee ABM, the application deadline for absentee by mail ballots is Monday, July 7th. And then our tentative date for the first mail out is going to be next Monday, June 30th. And that's pending the LNA, which is currently scheduled for ABM on Wednesday, this Wednesday at 10 a.m. And that's pending the project finalization. So we can only start LNA once the project's been approved and signed off on. So we went ahead and advertised for that, but we'll notify the observers if we need to delay. And then AIP, they were bringing in their management teams next Tuesday, July 1st, for a refresher training, which is not required but always encouraged. So they will be bringing in those teams next Tuesday, which we can't believe is July 1st. The elections team is already 85% staffed for Election Day. They're continuing to confirm workers from June 17th. So just as we hear back from them, they're copying and pasting them over to the 15th. And then prep, their LNA is scheduled for 9 a.m. on Wednesday. So we start with prep at 9 a.m. and then go over to ABM for the ICCs at 10 a.m. So again, pending project finalization, we just got the proofs, like I mentioned, at 2:30. So it takes some time to go through all of the different proofs, but we're working on those to make sure all aspects of the project is correct before we sign off on it. And then finally, registration is scanning and indexing all the voter certificates from the June runoff. And then they're also looking ahead to after the runoff, where they will be working on Marietta redistricting. There was some redistricting done within the city of Marietta last year that we weren't aware of until this year with their wards. And so since we've had so many elections, as we've been mentioning, we have to wait until we're done with election time to do those redistricting. So they will be tackling that as soon as we can after the runoff. And so with that, just to look, as we've been mentioning, we're about to have our 5th election in 7 months. And I want to take a moment to thank the staff. Although we had a low turnout, that doesn't change the level of work that goes into running an election, especially a countywide election like the one we just had. We, of course, wish that there were more voters that came. I would like to note that we did mail out a postcard to all registered voters at the beginning of the year that had all the election dates on them. As the board is aware, that mailing cost just under $300,000. So it's not feasible in our current budget to do a mailing prior to every single election. We've actually never done that type of mailing before, where we send out a notice at the beginning of the year with the election date. So we utilize the requirement to notify voters of their redistricted commission district by adding those calendar dates. We just got an email last week actually from a voter thanking us for that postcard, that they put it on their fridge and that they're grateful that we mailed it out. So we are trying to do those things more. We're planning to do one at the beginning of next year with more information, kind of like the voter guide we did last November. It was all over our social media, all over the county's social media. I know it was covered in the MDJ and the AJC as well as local news. But unfortunately, our budget doesn't stretch much more than those activities I've mentioned. But the team worked as hard as they could to get the word out on this election, just like we'll continue to do for the runoff and for the elections later this year. So we have the runoff coming up on the 15th, then November 4th. We'll finally get a little bit of a break for the staff, telling everyone they have to take at least a week off in August and September and get some R&R in, and then a potential December 2nd municipal runoff, which is looking more and more likely. So we'll know better after we have qualifying, which is in August for the municipals. And so with that, that concludes my update. Are there any questions?
I don't have, does anyone have any questions for Director Paul? No? Okay, don't have any. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to know if you had any updates on, like, the position vacancies and filling of those.
Sure. So we are in the process. Let me reach back in my brain. I know that our vacancies were in registration. I believe that they filled their technician position, which is the front desk. We still had some internal movement opening up some positions. So I'll get with, I believe registration and prep is where those openings were. And I know that the interviews have concluded, and I'm not sure, because we were in the middle of an election, where the hiring status is on some of those. So I'll get an update from those two managers and send that to the board once I have more information.
Great, and you could just send us the updated org chart when you have all that.
Great.
Cool, thank you.
Just for the public and a refresher for my mind, can you just do a quick summary on the voter roll purge coming up?
Sure. So we actually just got a notification from NoInc today with important information on the July, what's called the NGE mailing, which is that purge. So we will let them know that we'll move forward with them using the internal system, and they gave us the pricing on what that'll be. And then we have to let them know by June 25th. And then in July, they're going to mail out the notices of all of those voters that are on the roll to be purged. So those are voters who have been inactive for 2 federal election cycles. So after they hit the end of their second cycle this last November, that then makes them eligible to be removed. And so they'll get that notice, and then we wait 40 days, and is, I believe, 40 days. And then once that 40 days passes, if we don't have any update from them, then they're removed from the voter roll.
Can you remind me, was it NoInc that does not forward mail?
So that was an issue with that specific mailing that we did, where they check the NCOA database and they preload postcards with the ones that are in the database with additional funding to be forwarded. So before we respond to them, confirming them, that's one of the questions we have, is to make sure, are they gonna preload all of the cards with that additional funding? Or what's their plan for that? I know the options are either for them to mail them directly or for them to mail them to us and us stamp each of them and then mail them, which is not feasible with 37,000 pieces of mail. So we will confirm with them and with the vendor that they are going to make sure that they have enough postage on there to be forwarded.
On every one?
With the ones that was the issue they ran into, right, with the one that we had at the beginning of the year, is that they just did the ones with the database and the NCOA database, but the NCO database is not necessarily most reflective of up to date. And so there were people who had a forwarding that were not in the NCOA database. Those were the ones that were returned to our office saying postage due, that we then placed in an envelope and hand stamped additional postage to resend to the voter.
And if
Okay.
you will, Director Fall, remind us of the timing of this mail out.
I don't believe they don't have a drop date in their email. It just says July, but it does say that they're hoping to drop them before the 10th because postage rates are set to increase on the 13th, but it doesn't have a hard date on when the actual mailing will be dropped.
Okay. I was just thinking of that 40-day time frame afterwards and kind of where that would put us as we look ahead for the upcoming election and all the activities that take place prior to that. So, okay. Ms. Fisher, did you have something you wanted to raise?
Well, I was trying to think through this, but I'll just think out loud. If they mailed them on the 10th and the election day is July 15th, what if somebody shows up and votes? How does that work?
If they fill out their voter affidavit, then they would no longer be inactive, just as if any inactive voter shows up to vote. So they fill out their affidavit, and then they're able to vote, and then they would no longer be inactive. So that would count as a interaction on their record, and then that would pull them off the NGE list.
Okay.
Anything further? If that is it, thank you, Director Fall, for your update. Are there any board member comments? None? Okay. I do note that there is a need to move into executive session, and I am happy to entertain a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of discussing potential litigation. Oh, correct, pending. Right. I will rephrase. I am making I will entertain a motion to move into executive session for the purposes of discussing pending and potential litigation.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. It's been moved and properly seconded to move into exec session for the purposes of discussing pending and potential litigation. All those in favor? The motion passes 4-0. 4-0. Okay. CP, I'm fairly certain there will be a need for a vote to be taken in the public afterwards. So we apologize, but 99.9% certain. Okay. So with that, yes, sir. Okay. So with that, team, thank you so much for your hard work, and I guess we'll be right back at it again next month with the runoff. Thank you. I will entertain a motion to exit executive session.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. It's been moved and properly seconded to exit executive session. All those in favor? Motion passes with a vote of 4-0, noting Ms. Everett's absence. Moving on, is there a motion coming out of executive session?
Yes, I'd like to move to suspend the rules and add an agenda item approving the engagement of special legal counsel.
Okay. It's been moved to suspend the rules to amend the agenda for the item Mr. Bruning specified. Is there a second? To the motion to suspend the rules? Okay.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and properly seconded to suspend the rules to amend the agenda to add an agenda item. Is there a further motion
Yes.
to take up the item?
Do we take a vote on that first?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. It's been,
Oh, sorry.
I thought I asked for a vote. We voted.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I
no
didn't
clear.
hear
Yeah,
you
just
ask
clear
for
it.
a vote.
I
think
apologize then.
Steve punched the button.
Right,
Sorry.
right, and I followed him. Yeah, if you
That's
will
okay.
clear it, please. It has been moved and properly seconded to suspend the rules to amend the agenda to add an agenda item. All of those in favor? The motion passes with a vote of 4-0, noting Ms. Everett's absence. Is there anything further?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the engagement of special counsel for purposes of legal representation on matters in which the board's attorney may have a conflict of interest and for other purposes, including personnel matters, as authorized in the board's engagement agreement with Haney, Litchfield, and White, and to authorize execution of the agreement by the chair and vice chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to, thank you. It has been moved and properly seconded to authorize the engagement of special counsel for purposes of legal representation on matters in which the board's attorney may have a conflict of interest and for other purposes, including personnel matters, as authorized in the board's engagement agreement with Haney, Litchfield, and White, and to authorize execution of the agreement by the chair and vice chair. Is there any discussion? Okay. There being no discussion, all of those in favor? The motion passes a vote of 4-0, noting Ms. Everett's absence. Is there anything further? If not, I will note our upcoming meetings will be held Monday, July the 14th, here. No, I'm sorry, Tuesday, July 15th. Yeah, I don't know why that says this on here. Tuesday, July 15th, which will be our election night meeting. Then we will have a meeting on the 18th of July, which is our pre-cert meeting, followed by a meeting on July 21st, which will be our regular and certification meeting. And notice of all those meetings will go out accordingly. If there's nothing further, I will adjourn the meeting at 5:49 p.m.
Hoorah.
All right, thank you, and thank you, CP.